welcome to our masterclass today, Safe Adoption of AI, Making AI Visible, Governed and Secure. My name is Gary Byrne, and on behalf of Nostra, I'd like to start by thanking you all for joining us again today. Over this series of masterclasses, we've been looking at advancements in technology and how they can really help us, but also how they have to be used in a responsible way. AI is absolutely transforming how organizations work, but security, governance, and compliance simply have to come first. So today, we're taking a deep dive into how AI is already in most of your businesses, whether it's been approved or not, and most importantly, how you make it visible, governed, and secure. We look at the AI opportunity and the risks that have come with it, how you can actually see and govern the AI tools already in use, and how you can protect your data and prove compliance to boards, customers, and regulators. This will be a practical session, not a technical deep dive. Plenty of value at whatever stage of the AI journey you're on. And as always, we've got a top level of experts speaking, and we do have quite the team today. We have our Managing Director for Nostra West, Gary Melvin. We have our Head of Compliance, Jason Burns. Our Co-founder and Principal Solutions Architect, Senan Finucane. Our Head of Modern Workplace, Jaco Kruger, our Head of Security, Reg Stallard, Cyber Security Manager, Andrew Murphy, and to kick us off, we have our Cyber ICT Risk and Compliance Consultant, Reg Stallard. So again, quite the team. As always, our advice is please listen to what the experts are saying and look at the recommendations they're making. The recommendations are there to protect you. We always say that. As always, these sessions are best when interactive. So any questions you have, please post them in the chat, post them in the Q&A, and we'll deal with them. And as always, we'll leave time at the end of the session specifically to deal with Q&A. We will be recording the sessions, this session as always, and we'll send on the recording and slides to attendees afterwards. And today's session, along with all previous sessions, as always, are available in Nostra's YouTube channel. So again, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to hand over to Reg Stallard, who's going to kick us off.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, my name is Reg Stallard. I'm a Cyber ICT Risk Compliance Consultant with Nostra. So I'd like to just discuss a little bit about AI as a whole. I think we all have kind of preconceived notions of what it is. So I'm just going to run through some of the origins of it and how we are where we are today, and some of the benefits and challenges we've seen both in our own organisation and to our customer base as well. So where AI came from, something came from R&D and curiosity to technicians and some of our larger technical companies. And here's a timeline of some kind of quite significant events over the last 20, 30 years. If you're of a certain vintage like me, you probably remember IBM's Deep Blue attempts to beat the world chess champion. So in 1997, that was successful, and that was based on data processing and algorithms. In 2011, kind of similar IBM attempt where Watson beat the current Jeopardy champion, Jeopardy, quite popular quiz game show in the US. 2014, so this is quite significant, GANs, generative adversarial networks. So two adversarial networks compete against each other to generate fake and realistic images. This is where deep fakes come from, and we'll jump into that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. 2016, DeepMind's AlphaGo beats Go World Champion Lee Sedol. So that's quite similar to the IBM's attempt to beat the chess champion, although the game Go is quite significantly more complex than chess, with significantly more permutations and calculations. And what that DeepMind attempt was, it didn't learn or process or try to brute force attempts on moves. It actually learned how the game was playing and was able to compete with the other player. In 2017, this is probably one of the most significant ones. Google published the Transformer. So that's the T in GBT, and I'll jump into that in a little bit more detail as well. 2022, again, a quite significant event. ChatGPT, we probably all remember this, reaches 100 million users in 2 months. No other technology or social media platform was able to reach that many users in that short time. And then in 2023, Microsoft ships Copilot. So now AI has arrived inside of all of our office and on the desk of almost all of our employees. General adversarial network. So how AI learns to fake. So this is the 2014 idea behind deep fakes. So these two networks compete against each other, and they both get better. So there's the generator, which is the forger, creates fake images, audio or video from scratch, and tries to pass them off as real. The discriminator component that compares each fake against a real example and calls out the ones it spots. So they play this game millions of times, and each round the forger improves until the detective can no longer tell real from fake. And that's when the output is convincing enough to fool a person. So why this matters, this is the engine behind deep fakes. A short clip of someone's voice or video is now enough to clone them. If a call or video asks you to move money or data or allow access to a system, you need to verify the person in a separate channel. GPT, so what the name tells you. So Copilot and ChatGPT are both GPTs. These three words explain how they work. So they're generative pre-trained transformers. So the generative component writes by predicting the most likely next word over and over until an answer forms. Pre-trained, so before you ever type, the model has learned patterns of language from billions of documents, books, websites, lots of data. The transformer component, so that's the algorithm underneath, published in 2017, weighs which words in your prompt matter most to the meaning. So it adds value to them as opposed to understanding language patterns. So what this matters for security, there's no fact database behind these answers. So wrong ones arrive in the same confident tone. So outputs need to be checked. So we call that human in the loop. Your prompt is the data. So everything you type is processed on the provider systems. And where it goes depends on the tool and the control you have around it. And that's why we try and control those tools. So the transformer, just jumping on that a little bit deeper. So this is what enabled lots of our AI tools today. So it reads the whole sentence at once. So some of the older models read word by word and forgot the original words at the start by the time it got to the end. So the transformer takes all these words together so nothing gets lost. The attention weighs what relates to what. So for each word it works out which other word matters most. So in the sentence, the ID he provided was fake. It links fake back to ID, not he. So it deems that to be the most important part of providing the ID. Reading it all at once means it scales. So because the maths runs in parallel and the algorithms, you can train on far more text and build far bigger models. That's why the 2017 releasing lots of today's systems. So the catch is that it matches patterns in language. It doesn't understand it, although sometimes we feel that the concept or the context is added there, but it's really just matching language patterns. So what does AI do well today? We're probably all using these already, and sometimes we don't even consider it as an AI tool, but drafting and summarizing. So first drafts of emails, reports, meeting notes, it can do that in seconds, much faster than we can. Search and answers, so we can research multiple websites for specific data or things we're checking. Questions in plain language instead of multiple browsers or applications open. If you're living under a rock, you probably won't have seen the advancements in coding. So writing software, developers use it to write their code, review and explain. Customer service, we're probably all using multiple chatbots. These handle routine queries around the clock, so the service is available. Fraud detection, banks flag unusual transactions in real time, much faster than any human could. And then forecasting, so demand and risk credit models built on pattern spotting. So the bigger picture, what does these advances mean for society? So there's real gains and real risks, and they're both already here. So some of the gains, productivity, we covered some of them there. Hours of drafting and admin to cut down to minutes. Science, there's huge advancements in science, faster discoveries and materials research. Accessibility, so we've live captions, instant translation, screen readers that describe images and add context to some of our data. And services, so help available around the clock, not just office hours. Some of the risks these bring, so deep fakes, so convincing fake video and clone voices. Bias, automated decisions can repeat old unfairness at scale. Job disruption, so roles are potentially changing faster than our retraining efforts. And overtrust, fluid confidence answers that are simply wrong, but we deem them to be accurate and true. So the regulators have moved. So the EU Act is law now. Its transparency rules and hybrid systems apply from the 2nd of August. So some of the gains at their biggest, and this is why nobody's putting AI back in the box, between the 4 or 5 large hyperscalers, they are going to invest almost $1 trillion in AI this year, and that will top 1 trillion next year. So some of the biggest advances that I've come across over the last couple of years. So protein mapping, determining one protein's 3D shape experimentally took years and often quite significant monetary investment. That was usually the doctoral thesis of a PhD student. DeepMind's AlphaFold predicted around 200 million, nearly every protein catalogued by science in lineage each. Its creator shared the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. New antibiotics, so MIT's model surfaced Talocin from 107 million candidates, which was a shell diabetes compound that proved lethal to several drug-resistant pathogens. The AI model actually found data that the researcher wasn't looking for. So this finding has little or no resistance emerging over 30 days of lab processing. The team's 2023 follow-up found general novel antibiotic class against MRSA in mice. These are in preclinical trials, but looks like it'll be the next advancements in antibiotics. Cancer screening in a Swedish randomized trial of 105,000 women. AI support mammography reading detected 29% more cancers without more false positives, while nearly halving radiologist screening workload. Around 10 years ago, radiology was one of the first touted automated AI disruptors where people would lose a job and lose their work. Radiology employment is up 55% in the last 10 years. So because we've advanced that service so much, the demand for those services has skyrocketed. Weather forecasting, DeepMind's graph cast produces 10-day forecasts in under a minute that beat the conventional gold standard. National forecasters now run these AI models alongside their physics models. So when it goes wrong, so some real world cases, you might have heard or come across some of these. In bias, Dutch tax office, an algorithm flagged childcare benefit fraud and wrongly accused thousands of families. Those families were primarily dual nationality, or they weren't Dutch natives. So that scandal brought down the Dutch government in 2021. Again, that's the human in the loop concept, that we don't trust the AI tools. We'll always have a human oversight. New York lawyers, a court filing cited 6 precedented cases. ChatGPT had invented all of the 6. They didn't exist. Judge fined the lawyers and the story went global. Arup, a finance employee, that was a new employee, joined the video call with his CFO and his colleagues. Every face and voice on the call was a deep fake, and they convinced him to make 15 transfers totaling 24 million. So these are different tools that we have the same gap. No one stopped to verify before acting. And again, that's the human in the loop concept. The EU AI Act, what high risk actually means, it's in force since 2024. Some of the high risk uses are credit scoring and credit worthiness checks, everyday business in the sector, risk assessment and pricing in life and health insurance, recruitment, promotion, employee monitoring, and biometric identification, critical infrastructure and law enforcement. So a high risk system must have a risk management system in place with quality controls on the training data, logging technical documentation and EU registration. Human oversight, again, that's the human in the loop, designed in, and demonstrated accuracy and security tested before the launch. From the 2nd of December, chatbots must tell you that they're AI, and AI-generated content and deepfakes must be labelled. So why this matters to your organisation? So understanding the AI tools and use. Currently, adoption is outpacing both AI security and governance. So many of our employees are already using these tools. So your data is what criminals want. Identities, account numbers, transaction histories, paste into a public or the wrong tool can hand it over. GDPR applies to every prompt. Client or colleagues' personal data in an unapproved AI tool can be a reportable data breach. Our regulators are expecting control. DORA has applied to EU financial firms since January 2025, with NIS2 due to be transposed into Irish law shortly. These cover the ICT tools you use, and that includes AI. Trust is the product, so infantry the AI tools in use for your organisation and define acceptable use and processes. One leak costs more than any productivity gains. So the core distinction we have, so the public AI tools that some of your employees may use versus your Copilot. So it's the same kind of AI, the same processing, but very different handling of your data. So public chatbots, your prompts may be stored and used to train future models. Data leaves the company's control, no contract protecting it. No connection to your file permissions or sensitivity labels, and free tiers make money somehow. Often your data is the somehow. So if we're using Microsoft Copilot, our prompts and responsibilities stay inside our Microsoft tenants. Microsoft doesn't use them for training. It respects the file permissions and sensitivity labels we already have, and it's covered by Microsoft's enterprise data protection terms. So the hidden risks, shadow AI. So this term is coined traditionally from shadow IT. So employees using AI tools the organization has improved or doesn't even know about it. So these efforts are rarely malicious. Usually someone's trying to work faster, but it quietly moves company data into tools with no contract, no logging, no oversight. So you can't see or protect it. Some examples of these are personal chatbots, pasting client details or internal text into a personal GPT service or accounts to draft a reply. AI note-taker bots, which are quite commonplace. They're free transcription tool bots that join Teams or Zoom call and send a recording to an outside service. Research has shown that employees actually disengage from Zoom or Teams calls if they know there's AI note-takers in place because they don't want every mention or comment recorded verbatim. Data analyst uploads, uploading a client list or spreadsheet to a free viewer data AI site to build a quick chart or summary. Browser AI extensions, again, these are coming quite common. Add-ins that read every page you open, including many internal systems, specifically if they're cloud-based, like your CRM package or your private organizational platforms. So one rule we have, if your current IT tools can't do it, ask the organization to assess and improve a tool. Don't go around and do it on your own. The point isn't blame, it's that your IT can't protect your data if it doesn't know it's leaving the business. So that's all I have. I hope I've set the context for the rest of the discussion. I'll hand it back to Derek.
Thanks, Reg. So, hi everybody. So we've just heard about the opportunities AI brings to organizations, but also some of the risks that actually comes with it. What I'd like to focus on for the next few minutes is just something that often gets overlooked when people actually start talking about AI, and that's everyone's talking about Copilot, ChatGPT, automation, and the productivity gains that we actually get from this. But before we actually talk about AI, we need to talk about the foundations underneath it. We've heard about what AI can do, and I think we're all past the point of wondering whether businesses are actually going to use AI. They are. It's there now and everyone wants it. The question is now, how do we let people use it without creating any security problems at the same time? One of the things I've seen in security, everybody gets excited about the newest technology, and AI is probably the biggest example of what we've heard to date. Everyone wants it. So but there's no point in putting fantastic AI governance on top of an environment which isn't properly secure and doesn't have some of the basics, like MFA isn't properly configured, your devices aren't managed, you might have still old accounts. Nobody really knows what way and what the state of your data is, and your Microsoft 365 tenant isn't actually being properly monitored. I suppose if you were to try and build a penthouse, you would want to make sure that your foundations is first good. Imagine your AI, that penthouse is your AI, identity, device management, and your Microsoft 365 security. That would be your foundations. I suppose a line would be AI doesn't replace good security. If anything, AI makes good security more important. So let me just see if we can change these slides. For some reason I'm not able to change the slides there, guys. Yeah, you can go to the next one, thanks. So let me give a bit of an example of, I suppose, that if somebody in your sales team, they're working on a big opportunity, let's say it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the customer has an Excel file, they need to get an email out to potentially 50 or 100 personalized emails. And someone says, sure, throw it into ChatGPT. So they do. And the funny thing is, it worked brilliant. probably saves them about 2 or 3 hours work. And that isn't the problem. The problem isn't what came back. The problem is actually what went in. The names, the email addresses, the customer's information, potentially the commercial information, or whatever happened to be in that spreadsheet. Nobody woke up that morning thinking, I'm going to cause a potential data breach. They're just trying to do their job quicker. But I suppose that's the point of the story. We see versions of this all the time. Someone wants meeting notes, so they install an AI meeting bot. Somebody needs to analyze a spreadsheet, so they find some free AI tool online. Someone wants help writing an email, so they paste the whole email chain into a public AI service. And they're not trying to bypass security. What they're actually trying to do is to save some time, 20 or 30 minutes or something. The problem isn't necessarily the user. The problem is that it wasn't the safest, the easiest way wasn't the safest way, basically. So instead of simply saying, no, we can't allow users to do that, what if we give that same salesperson an approved tool? So with the same customer information, same deadline, same productivity gains. But now they're using an approved AI service within the environment, which is secure and governed. And before we should do this, we need to have the proper foundations that your AI should sit on. So the product which we've been using for quite a long time now is our own Cloud Shield, which is a stack of layered products. And that's a very strong foundation of what you need for your AI to sit on top of. I'm not going to give a lot of details on the different 10 layers of protection which we use here, just a kind of a high level. This is more focused on the safe AI adoption rather than getting into the full security stack that we use. But if I just go through it at a very high level of some of what the basics are. So our standard Cloud Shield, the first question is, are we confident that the person who's logging in is actually who they say they are? Do they have proper MFA? Every business really should have MFA now, conditional access policies. Basic example of that is where are they logging in from, geolocation or something? And do they have managed secure identity? So do we know who they say they are? Our Plus version is the next level up, which is more about the device management. So, okay, we trust who the user is, but what about the laptop or the device that they're actually using? Is it managed? Is it patched? Is Defender running on it? Has it been compromised? Knowing who the user is isn't enough if we don't trust the device that they're actually coming in from also. Then our Cloud Shield 365 is getting into more around the environment. So now we know who the user is. We know, we trust the device that they're actually logging on from, but we need to protect where the business actually lives. And now we're protecting and monitoring the wider 365 estate. So that's everything that they use on a day-to-day, your emails, your Teams, your SharePoint, OneDrive, cloud applications. And we also have on top of that our SIEM SOC, which the SOC would be then a 24-hour monitoring service. So if something did actually manage to breach in, we can actually isolate the incidents before it actually spreads further. I suppose what I ask people on this call today is to have a think about where your own organization actually sits. You might have a proper security in place, you might not. You might have and should have the basic stuff like MFA protection. You might have endpoint protection, but you might not have Defender. You might have bits of all three versions of what I've just discussed there. But the ask really today is don't jump into our fourth option here unless you have proper security and proper foundations in place. Because the reality is most organizations now, all of your data sits within most of your 365 tenants. That's where your business lives. And if the foundations aren't secure, AI simply amplifies the problem. AI is only as safe as the environment that it's actually operating in. So once you have that, then you can get into your AI governance, and this is what we're talking about here today. Only when these foundations are in place, though, then you should look at stuff like your data loss prevention and your labeling, and then you get the AI piece. And then it's really what AI tools are you actually being used, what data are people putting into them, which ones do you allow, and which ones do you restrict. You have control, and you know that the data that's been put into them is actually safe and it's maintained within your tenant. So could someone go to the next slide for me, please? Sorry, thank you. So, foundations. The next slide. Sorry. Before I start covering the AI, we must get the foundations right. First, really is the identity, strong authentication, conditional access, protection against accounts being compromised, because today your identity is really the perimeter. Years ago, security was all about protecting the office network. Today, people work from home, they work from airports, they work from coffee shops. The perimeter is gone, and identity protection is now your actual front door. Device protection, knowing the users isn't enough. If the user is logged in from an infected laptop, we still have a problem. The devices people actually work from every day are laptops, phones, tablets. Those devices need to be managed and monitored and protected. Look at what most businesses actually operate from now. It's the tenant itself, or your emails, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your environments. For a lot of organizations, Microsoft 365 effectively is the business. We've all seen examples like employees who left 6 months ago and suddenly ask, is that account definitely being disabled? Or the laptop that hasn't checked in for about 3 months. Or someone might ask, yeah, does everyone have MFA? But when we actually review it, we find exceptions on it. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about the foundations here, is it's not about having bought the correct technology. It's about knowing that it's actually configured and working correctly. The big difference between thinking a control is there and being able to actually prove it's there. And I suppose that's what our Cloud Shield offering from Nostra actually gives you, is that level of view. So the next part is Defender that I want to talk about. And so let's talk specifically about Defender for endpoint, because this is where AI conversation really starts becoming really practical. When I meet customers, sometimes I ask the question, do you know which AI tools your employees are actually using? And the answer usually is, I think so. They might say it's ChatGPT, maybe Copilot, a bit of Gemini or Claude or something. And they're not really sure because they don't actually have visibility. And I suppose the visibility comes from the data. Defender for endpoint gives us that visibility. Every protected device provides data. It tells us what's being used, what applications are being accessed, what cloud services are being consumed. Without that information, your view of AI is actually incomplete, and effectively you're flying blind. There's no other reason that matters. Once you discover something risky, you need to be also able to act on it. Visibility without action isn't security. Defender allows us to apply controls consistently, whether someone's in the office, working remotely, or traveling, or sitting on a customer site. The protection follows the user, the visibility follows the device, and the governance will follow the data. Confidence that they understand what's happening, can report accurately, and confidence that we're safely moving forward with AI adoption. Really, that's my kind of piece on today, guys. But before we start trying to cover an AI, we need the foundations underneath it, is my point. You need to know who's accessing your environment. You need to trust the devices that they're actually using. You need Microsoft 365 protected and monitored. And crucially, we need that visibility because you can't protect what you can't see. And that's probably a perfect point for me to hand over to Andrew, because Andrew's now going to show you what happens once you've got that visibility and how we actually discover the AI tools people are using and then start putting the governance in place to it. So thank you, everybody. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, everyone, for joining today's webinar. So just a little bit of an introduction for myself. So I'm Andrew Murphy. I'm the Senior Cybersecurity Lead here in Nostra. So on this section, really, we're looking to run through how we obviously adopt AI security. So we've chatted around the foundation, the security required in order to govern and the risks. But then in terms of adoption, how can we actually make that easier, and how can we get discovery and visibility within a tenant? So the question really we're trying to answer is what AI tools are currently in use throughout an organization today, and how can we actually manage that access then going forward? So realistically, this is where I suppose the shadow AI conversation stops being abstract risk and actually becomes something we can measure, utilizing the tools, Defender, cloud apps, everything that comes with those foundations that were described earlier. So once we can see those applications in use, we can then assess them, we can improve, we can restrict risky ones, and we can continue monitoring AI adoption as it grows within the environment. The first step is making sure our discovery capability has the coverage and information it needs so we can actually make these informed decisions. Let me just go ahead and move on to our next slide here. Could someone kindly just move on to the next section? Thank you. So really, when we're looking at making informed decisions about AI applications, we need to obviously reliably discover what applications are in use throughout your environment. So we use Defender for endpoint for that. This acts as the sensor on managed devices. It'll retrieve the logs required for analytics. So Defender is the enhanced detection and monitoring tool that's included within your Microsoft 365 Business Premium licensing, and that would be deployed through our Cloud Shield Plus and 365 offering. So if you are on that, you'll already have some of this telemetric data available. The cloud app discovery is what then comes into play, and it integrates with Defender. So once we introduce cloud app discovery, it'll take advantage of that visibility that Defender has, and it'll actually give us a platform to be able to see AI services in use throughout your organization. That's regardless if the device is used within the organization's network, perimeter, or outside. So to Derek's point earlier, realistically nowadays with hybrid users, in a lot of cases, you'll have more staff working remotely and working from home than you'll actually have within your network boundary. So it's very important for that threat protection to follow your device. So a firewall on the perimeter isn't good enough anymore. We need Defender, we need content filter, and we need app control, we need attack surface reduction on the endpoint, regardless where you are, where you're working, to make sure the device is secure. Once we really have that visibility, the second really thing we need to look at is the baseline before we actually go into the restriction side of things. So we really want to observe what we're actually seeing through that analytic data that's coming through from Defender into cloud apps. We need to understand the legitimate business requirements and document the applications that are actually already in use in the environment. Obviously, if we immediately block everything unfamiliar, we risk disrupting a valid business process before we actually understand it. So really a key, I suppose, component of these reviews is actually understanding who's using the AI apps that have been discovered, and what they're using it for, where is the data actually coming from, and what's the actual risk rating of those applications. So once we have that information, we can then look at making an informed decision about what we actually want to sanction and what we want to mark unsanctioned based on the risks from our reviews. So that particular list, once we make that informed decision, I suppose ultimately means rather than asking the question, I suppose, what AI tools are in use, and you're putting down a list, you're trying to do surveys, you're trying to ask staff what they might be using, to actually have a defined list documented as part of your policies from actually what's allowed in use in the organization. And we'll have a maintained sanction list within our 365 environment as well that will actually be technical controls to back up your policy. So finally, then the next section would be the ongoing process. So obviously, once we do the assessment, we have the observability of what's actually within the environment. We then need to also factor in new AI services that come to market. Obviously, new AI services appear very quickly. The discovery and review cycle needs to run continuously, so it can't be treated as a one-time assessment or a periodic review and manual intervention to go in and unsanction applications as they come to market. There's just too many. It's moving very fast, obviously, with the vast opportunity that comes with AI and the buzz around it. So we need to automate as much of that as possible. So the next slides we're looking at here is just the layers that will make up the shadow AI management within the environment itself. So we'll be starting with the discovery. So ultimately, put simply, what applications are actually being used in your environment on the endpoints. We move on to then assessment. So what risk does the application actually introduce to your environment, and what controls does the provider have in place for that application? Next is the actual sanctioning then, which is our technical control. So which applications have actually been approved and are allowed in the organizations, and then which ones need to be unsanctioned that either haven't been reviewed or require a review on the security. The next section then is the monitor stage, and that's the ongoing review, usage, and data movement then through the applications. We need to review the decisions regularly. Applications, terms, or the organization's requirements may change as well over time. So it's more so, I suppose I think of it like an application kind of approval life cycle. Discovery will tell us what's happening. The assessment itself will inform the decision we make. Sanction or restricting applies the actual technical control, and then monitoring ensures us that the controls are actually deploying our working in the environments. So if we have a look then, the Defender for Cloud Apps and Cloud App Discovery section here will show us which applications are genuinely being used, obviously including the generative AI services within the environment. So rather than relying, as I said earlier, on surveys, asking people to remember every tool they've tried and having, I suppose, somewhat of a vague idea of what AI applications may be used in the environment, we need to have a platform that will actually provide factual information around the application discovery, the risk information, if the application has been sanctioned or unsanctioned, status and usage trends. And that's what gives us ultimately our security and management evidence to support and allow a stricter block decision. The important point is supposed to know here is that discovery is not the final destination. It gives us the evidence required to make the decision and look at the required controls needed. So an application appearing in the report doesn't automatically assume that it's malicious or it's 100% risky. It more so just means that it has been observed, it has been seen in use in the environment, and it needs to be, I suppose, put into the appropriate category of governance and reviewed. So a business decision needs to be made whether or not to continue using it, or look maybe for a safer alternative. Maybe Copilot can do the same job, and the actual data around it then can be contained within your 365 environment. So you always obviously retain control over that data. So if we look then the example here of the shadow AI detection report. So these are some automated reports we can actually configure and set up out of the box once we have Defender for cloud apps and Defender for endpoints rolled out across an environment. So at a high level, what we want out of this report really is how many identities are accessing unapproved or unassessed AI applications, how many AI apps have been observed in the environment, what does the activity look like at user level, and which applications have been identified as higher risk. So those questions will give us scale and priority. The number of applications tells us breadth of the adoption throughout the environment. The user level activity tells us where usage is concentrated. So is there a particular department using a specific application? You know, maybe there's marketing AI. And again, you know, it's more so about the conversation around the review and seeing, you know, is there better suitable options? Is there agents we can use? Is there features in Copilot? You know, if we're seeing ChatGPT, if we're seeing Claude, if we're seeing personal instances, we just need to have that conversation, and we need to highlight the risk in terms of the data going into it. So the report really should drive the conversation. So it's not just simply to produce a list. Some tools said may have genuine business use cases and should be sanctioned. Others may be unnecessary duplicates, and they might not meet the organization's requirements. So really this will change the discussion from what we think people may be using to, well, this is actually the activity we can see, and these are the applications we know that are in use, and these are our highest risk apps, and these are the ones we need to prioritize and look at first. So the last slide there was just our summary report. So the one we're moving into here is just the individual application breakdown metrics we can also get. So for each discovered AI service, we want to understand obviously what the application name is actually in use, the level and frequency of use, the identities, agents or users they're actually using it, and the risk of the application. So there's 4 situations happening here. So a widely used application with a genuine business requirement, an application being tested by a small number of users, a duplicate tool that provides no additional value, or a higher risk application handling business information. So when we look at that breakdown and that scenario, obviously those situations should not all warrant the same response. So the strength of the approach is that control can be proportionate to the actual risk. So if we look at this slide, we can see the risk scores. And when we're looking at risk scores, we're based not on 1 being highest risk and 10 being lesser risk. So this will give us a score breakdown and risk. It'll show us how much data is actually driving through these applications and the total amount of data across all generative AI tools in use. When we go down to the next section, then we can really start to go more granular through these applications and through discovery. So we're trying to understand the activity behind those figures. So is usage isolated or widespread? Does it come from one team, or does it appear across the organization? Is it occasional experimentation, or has the service become part of a regular business process? The purpose is to identify obviously the business process and the data exposure that may actually sit behind that particular activity. Repeat use in one department can indicate that a team has found obviously valuable use for the application. So it creates an opportunity to understand the requirements and move the team towards a sanction tool with the appropriate controls in place. Equally concentrated usage is, you know, higher risk tool, which may indicate an area where intervention should be prioritized. So through this, we can see, obviously, based on the risks, anything that are lower scored, you know, generally speaking, kind of if you're going 6, kind of 5 below, we really need to go and review that application, because ultimately it means that there's going to be compliance gaps, there's going to be security gaps, regulatory gaps, you know, where the application's been created, there might be maturity gaps as well. You know, it might not be around that long. So we've all seen from the likes of the recent one there from China, that obviously it was released, everyone jumped all over it, and then we had some issues obviously around data leakage and everything else. So If we move on to our next slide, there, please. So what is the risk score made up of? So again, that risk will be made up of general. So that will be the vendor domain itself, the founding year, i.e. the maturity of the application itself, popularity, and where the data is actually hosted. The security controls then behind it, is multi-factor authentication available, is data encrypted, who actually owns the data once it's inputted into the platform, and is there audit trails. Compliance, again, SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and they should have obviously those compliance certificates as well backed behind the platform. And then legal, data retention, privacy policies, and user data protection. If we move on to our next slide then. So in terms then, once we've implemented our policies, we'll then obviously have controls that we need in place to review and monitor the controls to ensure they're working. So we'll report on whether unmanaged usage is reducing, improved usage is increasing, the application inventory is being managed and maintained, and we'll do all that through automated reports. We use automated reports to show usage trends, user level analysis, department analysis, data transactions throughout the application, devices accessing AI, where access is actually originating, and alerting should be configured for new risky application detections as well, supported by Defender for cloud app security dashboards. The key thing here is newly discovered apps are caught automatically, and we're unsanctioning applications automatically as well. We cannot keep up with a manual approach on that, so we need to use real-time detection through Microsoft 365 to have a dynamic list that's automatically supported by those risk scores. If we can go ahead and move on to our next slide. So that's again just touching on the reporting and review and the alert policies we can configure there, so we can filter based on categories, risk scores, user counts, traffic volume, severity, and email notification as well to the right owners. We can go to our next slide there. So just to touch on this a little bit, which Jaco and Jason Burns will kindly extend on, but we also have the data security posture management tool, which will give us good insights into our information protection across the environment, our data loss prevention, and our insider risk management. So that will show us data at rest, what's stored, where it sits, how it's labeled, data in transit, what moves out of the organization into AI tools, and user risk, who's actually handling that data and how they behave with it. If we can go to the next slide, please. So just an example of what we can see through that DSPM, Data Security Posture Management Platform. We can see our percentage of classified or labeled assets, activities covered by data loss prevention, data security alerts triggered, and we can see then as well exposure for 365 Copilot interactions and oversharing of sensitive data, just to name a few. And we can see then an overall breakdown of estimated impact on risk patterns then as well, with a little timeline on that. Thanks very much, everyone, taking the time to join today. I hope that was useful, and I'll pass you over now to Jason and Jaco to discuss the data protection and compliance.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Moving quickly into the compliance element of what we have to do here. So we've all heard about the AI Act. We know there's GDPR, there's a new NIS2 directive coming out as well. So what do we really need to look at here? We need to look at what's in use. We need to look and see what data is actually going into the AI, and that we can prove what's actually happening. Now, the key thing here around compliance is to look that compliance, rather than being perceived as a blocker, is something that allows you to say yes with confidence in some shape or form, so that we know we're putting the right guardrails around what we're doing. Next slide, please. So 3 quick questions to ask when you're looking at anything. what AI tools are actually in use. So as Andrew says, we can run our Cloud Shield AI tools and pull out that information. We then need to look at what stops confidential information going into areas or exiting the business that we weren't expecting, and how can we prove that in any shape or form. So I'll hand over to Jaco now quickly for what data loss prevention would look like.
Thanks for that, Jason. So when we are looking at our information, the first thing we need to do is we need to classify our information, your sensitive label types. Now, depending on your organization, that label types could be something like public, internal, confidential, highly confidential. Then we protect the information. Now, what Microsoft does allow us to do is if something is marked as confidential or highly confidential, we can tell via DLP, we can tell Copilot that it's not allowed to train itself on that data at all, which means even if a user has access to the data, they will not actually be able to have access to it. And we apply that to our labels then to have it in place. And what the policy does is it reads the labels and it acts on them, including when the destination is an AI tool that nobody has approved. So what a sensitivity label does is it follows the file. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do with the file. So we would normally start in audit mode. So we normally start in audit mode with the data, and then we would just firstly audit what is going on. Then we would start by warning users. So just sending out user warnings saying that the policy is being breached without actually blocking them. And then we would move on to enforcing and to blocking users, which is the final step. And the reason why we go down that process is that it just gives end users a time to get used to the process, and it results with a better adoption of the process. Every step is logged and every step is audited as part of the process. And just one thing to note, that if you do allow your users to remove a label, you could set it that it allows them to remove a label, but it is audited and a user has to give a reason for that. And in the same way, the policies can also prevent information from going into AI, and it can report on everything that has been uploaded if it's in the browser, if it's in your tool, if it's in your Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And at the end of the day, it becomes a guardrail that protects you, and using Cloud Shield AI on top of that, along with your sensitivity labels, you can then just make sure that your information is totally protected inside your environment. Back to you, Jason.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jaco. So the common questions to the compliance team at the moment is really around due diligence. Are we meeting the AI Act requirements? And what controls are in place amongst the AI tool. So I think what Purview and the other tools that Andrew went through previously will give you is it'll give you that technical oversight of what's available to us. As you saw on Andrew's slide, it will tell us what risk it associates with it. So it will have how does it measure that risk. So I think if we move forward to the slide that has the 4 questions on how we assess a new tool. So the first thing that you must do is you must put in an appropriate request so that there's appropriate control around it. You must assess it for where the data is. Are there any certifications or qualifications that the tool provider has, and what does the model do with it? You then decide what are you going to do with this tool. Are we going to allow it? Are we going to restrict it? Are we going to approve it? Are we going to test it to then decide roll it out to a pilot group perhaps? And then at the end, record how we did this, what we did, and what was the decision at the end of it. So looking at due diligence, what are the items that tend to fail our due diligence at the moment? Well, it's very much at the leading edge or the bleeding edge. So we've had certifications come in that had incorrect stamps or similar on them. So no judgment there on how those were generated. We've had a what looked almost like a child's representation of a system, and the database was described as highly secure. I'm afraid we need a bit more information than that if we're trusting it with the keys of the kingdom, all our really important data. We have looked at a customer or at a supplier that had an ISO cert, but when we delved, their most recent audit recommended that they shouldn't actually retain that certificate because they weren't meeting the requirements of the audit. So I think the key things there around that are, on face value, it may look okay, but perhaps the data isn't in the EU, perhaps the data is being processed elsewhere, or perhaps the security isn't really worth what it's looked at. So I think with the cloud apps, it helps simplify that for you, because what it will do is it will assign a risk based on the known elements of the AI tools that it finds. If we can move forward there now. So as I say, the risk scoring does the first pass for you. So let's move on to the next slide. So what we need to do is we need to assess it. And there is an element once you move up to Purview that you will get what's called Compliance Manager in your tenant as well. What that allows you to do is it allows you to rate the controls you have put in place, rather like Secure Score, and say, what does your compliance score look like within your own environment? So it allows you to assess it, allows you to improve, because the recommendations will tell you what you need to do. And it'll also allow you to store the evidence so that you can use it as a
think we've lost Jason there, Gary.
Yeah, it just seems to have frozen there actually on Jason's for the moment. Apologies about this, folks.
That's okay, because it's a good time for me to come back in.
Yeah, thanks, Gar.
So I have a couple of slides just in terms of that was Jason just coming to the end of his. Basically for Jason's piece is that we're combining Defender for Cloud Apps, which gives you the visibility, and then the compliance piece is all around Pureview and Microsoft Pureview, and that gives you the compliance score, but also gives you the deep level of reporting that Andrew showed later on. So it's a combination of both, and they're both the Microsoft technologies that allow us to do this as a service. So I'm Gary Melvin. I'm just going to complete we only have you for another couple of minutes, so I'm just going to run through the final section and cover couple of closing statements, some elements around licensing, and then a little bit about next steps for those that are interested. So what we have discovered and what we have seen for the last while is that 75% of users in small to medium businesses are using AI at work, and 80% of those users are actually bringing some of their own AI to work. So all about today is around how do we give the users AI in a controlled manner, a visible manner that we can report on, and that we know where our data is leaving. So it's how do we put those guardrails and ensure the organizations we work with are adopting AI securely. We want all our customers to be using AI, but we want to work with you guys to make sure that it's done in a safe, secure manner. And that's what today is all about. The Cloud Shield AI approach is visibility, which we will enable through Defender for Cloud Apps. We will have Jaco and the team do information protection. So that's around labeling data. So what is confidential? What is sensitive data in the organization? How do we label that? Some data we don't want AI to have access to. That's how we do it using sensitive. If we mark it as confidential, we tell the AI tools that we don't give access to that data. So you can't have AI summarize a confidential data. We use data loss protection. So sensitive data, labeled data can't leave the organization based on rules you as an organization define. And then the compliance, governance, and oversight piece. This is where PureView come in. When you're asked what AI is in use in the organization, you have a list of sanctioned AI. One of the things with Copilot and the iterations of Copilot, Copilot gives access to a lot of AI models. So if you do need to use Claude or you want to use different models, all that can be done using Copilot. And you can do a lot of functionality based on the Microsoft Copilot solution. And we will cover some of that in upcoming webinars as well. So where to start? Discovery. Number 2, decide, give a list of sanctions, what's allowed, what's not allowed, protect the data, and then do the reporting. I'm going to cover briefly on licensing. So a lot of our customers run business premium. So that's the bit I'm going to cover today. No matter what licensing you're using, you can add these controls on. So business premium we like because there's a huge amount of functionality and security inside of it. The way we look at Microsoft Office licensing is business standard, no security, business premium, a lot of security. We build our Cloud Shield Plus product based on business premium, and that's endpoint protection and Defender for Endpoint, Intune, and all the pieces that allows us to actually get controlled visibility around AI. There is an add-on for business premium. There's a Defender for cloud apps and PureView bundle that Microsoft have released that goes on top of business premium. There's also a Copilot add-on for business premium. So there is a whole small business suite of licensing that sits on top of business premium. So Defender for cloud apps, all the stuff that Andrew showed in terms of let's discover, let's get visibility in play in terms of AI, and then let's allow certain AI. The PureView then is around the compliance piece, the reporting, the visibility. The PureView licensing unlocks some stuff around sensitivity labels and data loss protection. So those are the 2 pieces that we pull together. There is a bundle released late last year that brings PureView and Defender bundle together. It has a lot of functionality, which is down on the left-hand side. The cost of all that functionality is around $47. The cost of the bundle is on top of business premium is $15. That's about $13.70 in euro, and that's what we use to unlock all the shadow AI and everything else. So key takeaways for today: AI is already in use, whether it's approved or not. A lot of organizations are lacking the visibility to make the decisions. The endpoint coverage in terms of Defender for Endpoint allows us to layer AI protection on top. So if you're on Cloud Shield Plus and above, which has Defender for Endpoint, we can layer AI protections on top of that using the Microsoft add-on licensing. Data governance is a big conversation. So the 2 big conversations we're having with customers at the moment are AI and compliance, and both of those goes together. And what our AI Shield offering is about is helping customers adopt AI safely in a controlled manner with tight controls and full visibility. Where we want you guys to start is to start with an AI review. So if you contact ourselves, if you have an account manager, contact them. If not, if you reach out to gary.byrne@nostra.ie, we'll have a discussion with you guys on an AI review. That is 3 components. It'll look at what shadow AI is in place, and then let's have conversations around what is in use in your organization. Then we will look at Copilot readiness as well. We'll have conversations around Copilot readiness. Is there certain people? We have reports, and the tenant will actually tell us these are the users in your organization that can benefit from Copilot. It'll give us a list of users. It'll say these 5, these 15 are users that could save time and increase productivity using Copilot. Coming down the line as well, we have a 30-day Copilot trial. So if you haven't engaged in terms of Copilot, and one of the things we probably would like to say as well, Copilot today is completely different from Copilot 6 months ago. It's completely different from Copilot, and it will be completely different from Copilot in 6 months' time. The benefit we find with Copilot is it unlocks value in your data. So it will look at your emails, it'll look at your documents in SharePoint, it'll look at your documents in 365. It allows you to use multiple models. It allows you to be more productive. So it's not just the data that you give to the prompt, it's the data that is available under your permissions that will be used in giving you the answers and helping you work through stuff in terms of Copilot. So there's quite a bit there, and we would love to discuss the AI readiness review with everyone that we have on the call. I don't know if there is any questions. We will hold back if people have questions and they want to hold on the line for a few minutes, where we are available, and we will go through any questions. But I'm going to hand back to you, Gar, just to close it out.
Yeah, Gary, listen, thanks very much. And just a second, what Gary's just said, folks, I know we are way over time. So if anyone needs to drop off, please do that. We will be recording this session. We're going to hang around for a couple of minutes just for a couple of questions. Okay, first of all, thanks a million abroad to all the presenters. A couple of questions. One from Donald Moore. Donald, thanks for the question. Is there an immediate red flag warning system in place in 365 when staff attempt to use non-approved AI tools? So I might throw that open to the panel there, please.
So the answer is no, not without it being pre-configured, because we have to tell AI what is sanctioned and what's not sanctioned. So the functionality is there, but the last look in terms of the list of AI tools in use is up on 2,500, and depending on what the AI is, it can be in legitimate use. So essentially, we have to work with our customers. We have to have those conversations. Customer decides what AI they want to use, and we block everything else. So the answer at the moment is that there's nothing out of the box automatically, and we do need to work through with that.
Yeah, it's really once the apps have been unsanctioned and sanctioned, and you've built up that baseline, then we can automate the report so that if there is a new app detected, you can have an alert raised in Defender and an instant for it and an email notification. But you do need to do that Defender for Cloud App work.
Fantastic, Donald. Thanks a million for that question as well. Okay, folks, question in from Edson Santos. Edson, thanks a million for the question. So have we in Nostra been using Microsoft GSA? And if so, have we been exploring it to detect and control unauthorized AI tools while still allowing access to approved AI applications? So I might throw that one over to you.
Yeah, I can take that one on. So the global secure access, yes, we have reviewed that. So that does work at a kind of perimeter level, gateway level, which is slightly different than Defender. So global secure access is an additional license if you do want to filter through that way. So with Business Premium and bringing in your Purview suite, obviously your Defender suite, you get it at the network protection layer on the endpoint itself. The difference with global secure access is once that's enabled on the endpoint, primarily you don't need extensions on browsers. So it'll actually work out the gateway of that global secure access system. So absolutely, for clients that are utilizing global secure access, and probably an important note on that is it's the internet profile of global secure access. There's two variations. There's the private access, which is basically your SSL VPN into your private network. So if you have on-prem resources, SQL servers, terminal servers, you know, back in the day, you'd have a direct connection from private into that, whereas the internet profile version will cost that little bit more as an add-on, but it does then give an additional layer on top of your network protection through the actual VPN, obviously encrypted connection then at the gateway level as well.
I think the better value coverage is probably on the Defender and Pureview add-on suite at the moment, rather than licensing the GSA in both. And it does work. We see for most of our customers and are on Business Premium, the value add-on is around Defender for Cloud Apps and the Pureview piece. And I think we will see a lot of customers going Pureview, especially in regulated. A lot of the regulation coming up. Pureview, that's the compliance conversation. Defender for Cloud Apps is the controlled AI conversation. Microsoft has made that bundle available, which is very cost effective. So that's where we see a lot of our customer going. We have GSAs as Andrew said, we have it on the private access, replacing VPNs. We don't want any sonic wall or firewall VPNs. We see that as legacy tech. But there is a suite for GSA that does private and public, which would cover off some of this, but maybe not give as much insight because we drop out the pure view piece. But yeah, that's a good question from Vincent. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks, Andy. And thanks, Ed, for the question. Folks, question from Joe Dalton. How do I risk assess the generation of Python code generated by AI? Also, what risk management is in place if agents are generated by something like Copilot Studio? Do I need to risk assess these agents?
So some of this is going to come down to human in the loop. So there is tools out there to go through all types of code. So there is security analysis tools that will look at all code, whether it's Python or Microsoft, different types of Microsoft code, whether it's PowerShell scripts. They will look, you can go through the code and give it a security analysis. The way we look at agents is agents takes an identity inside the tenant, and they get assessed under pure view and see what data they're accessing and stuff like that as well. So what we see as agents, we just think them as another user, see what data they're accessing, see what they've access to, and that's how we look at the activity of the agent rather than the creation of the agent. But we would hope the human in the loop is actually adding those controls as well.
Gary, thank you. And Joe, thanks a million for that question. Okay, folks, a question from Susan Lynn. Susan, thanks a million for the question. Is Copilot with the business premium license currently secure?
Yes, that is secure. So it is still enterprise data level protection, whether you're using the paid license or the free license that comes included with business premium. The only big difference would be where it integrates, where the paid license obviously integrates straight into all of your data, and the free license you would have to upload a file to be able to work with a file.
Just a caveat on that is it's based on the security applied on the tenant. So Copilot will get access to the user that's using it. So if that user is over permissioned, then it will get access to different data. And that's one of the big things that we see as a risk with AI tools. They'll have access to the data that the user has access to, and it will surface that access. So if a user doesn't know it has access to a folder, or somebody has inadvertently shared data 2 years ago to somebody, Copilot will actually have access to that data and will surface that information. And that is one of the things around enabling Copilot and enabling the AI tools. They will find the data. So if the data, if the structure hasn't been put around data permissions, sensitivity labels, all of that stuff, a Copilot will surface stuff quicker than what the user would find if they were looking for data.
Gary, thanks for that. And Jaco, also thanks for that. Folks, we could clearly talk about this subject all day. Listen, it's out there and it's the biggest topic. Just to revisit a couple of things that were said. So, Reg started with telling us that, 1 million users of ChatGPT in 2022, the year of its release in November 2022, like unprecedented use of this tool. Then Derek and Andy showed us, the basic fundamentals and the foundations that we constantly talk about in Nostra on these webinars and masterclasses, which is about making sure you have tools in place to be able to protect you and to be able to react if there's an issue and stop an issue from happening. I'm constantly flabbergasted. We're still seeing email breaches from people who don't have what we see as the Nostra fundamentals in place. And we're strongly saying to you to engage with us around putting the Nostra fundamentals in place. Derek made the point earlier, don't jump straight into AI protection there through Cloud Shield AI. It is a journey, but the start of the journey is making sure that the foundations are there. And again, going back to what Reg said on 1 million users, back in 2022, your staff are using this. The shadow AI is out there. We're seeing this all over the place. We've simply got to lock it down and we've got to control it and protect it. I'd like to thank all of the presenters there again today. And I'd like to just remind you, if you have a Nostra account manager, please reach out to them. We have AI readiness tools there. You know, we have the free trials coming down the road. We'll help you with training in whatever way that looks like as well. So we're here to support you. If you don't have a Nostra account manager, then reach out to myself personally. My email is there, as Gary said earlier, gary.byrne@nostra.ie. I'd like to once again thank the presenters. I'd like to once again thank yourselves, the attendees, and remind you that this recording will be sent out to you, and it's available with all other recordings on Nostra's YouTube channel. Folks, thanks very much and have a great day.